All right, let's move on to question number 3 in section 6.4. So we need to graph our results for these inequality problems. For question 3a, I can look at this 5 here. I can move that to the right-hand side. If I do that, it's going to become negative, so 8 minus 5. So that means y is going to be greater than 3. Okay, so y greater than 3, I just need to go to my graph here. Here's 3. If I'm greater than 3, I just shade to the right-hand side, and that should take care of it. For letter B, I have a plus 3, so if I move that plus 3 to the other side, it becomes negative. So y is greater than 7 minus 3, so y is greater than 4. So if y is greater than 4, I would go to my number line, circle 4, and shade to the right because y is greater than 4. Okay, for letter C, I can circle the 2, and if I bring that over, it's going to become negative, so I have negative 3. And then I minus the 2, so that's going to be x is less than or equal to negative 5. All right, this one is less than or equal to negative 5, so I need to have a closed circle here. So here is negative 5, and since I'm less than that, I can shade to the left. Okay, let's move on to letter D now. For letter D, I have a plus 1. If I move that to the other side, it becomes negative. So x is less than or equal to negative 2 minus 1. So this is x is less than or equal to negative 3. All right, so here's negative 3. I have a closed circle there at negative 3, and since I'm less than that, I shade to the left-hand side. Okay, let's move on to letter E now. So I can circle the negative 3. If I move that to the other side, it becomes positive, so negative 1 plus 3. So z is less than that. So now z is now less than negative 1 plus 3 is going to be 2. So z is less than 2. So here's 2, open circle. If I'm less than that, I shade to the left. Okay, let's now move on to letter H here. For letter H, there I see a 2a. If I bring that over to the left-hand side, it becomes negative. So I have 3a minus 2a is less than or equal to 4. So 3a minus 2a is going to be 1a, or just a single a. So a is less than or equal to 4. So where is 4 on the number line? Well, 4 is right here. I need a closed circle. And since I'm less than that, I shade to the left. Okay, now let's move on to letter M. So I believe for the homework assignment, we need to do M, N, O, and P. Okay, for the next one, so let's take a look at the numbers and letters here. Here's a plus 5 and here's a negative 5n. I can move those to the other side, so this become negative 6n. And if I move this guy over, it becomes positive 5n is greater than the 5. And then if I move the positive 5 over, it becomes negative 5. Okay, so let's just continue on the left-hand side here. So negative 6n plus 5n is negative 1n. And that's going to be greater than, well, 5 minus 5 is going to be 0. And then I can divide both sides by negative 1. If I divide both sides by negative 1, I get n and 0. And since I'm dividing by a negative sign, you need to flip the sign here, okay? So since you're dividing by a negative sign, you got to flip the sign there. So n is less than 0. Well, here's n is less than 0. Well, here's 0, and if I'm less than 0, you just shade to the left-hand side. Okay, let me erase that so I have some space to do the next letter here. For the next letter, I can circle the negative 3n and the positive 6. So let's go ahead and just interchange both of those. So that goes on that side, this goes on that side. If I do that, I get negative 4n here remaining, and then this will become positive 3n is greater than 6. And then if I move the positive 6 over, it becomes negative 6. Okay, so if I continue solving the problem here, this will become 0, and this will become negative n. And you divide both sides by negative 1, so that becomes an n. This becomes 0. 0 divided by anything is 0, and then you just flip the sign because you're dividing by a negative sign, right? So that sign flips. So n is less than 0. So ironically, it's the same answer. N is less than 0. So we shade to the left-hand side. Okay, let's take a look at the last few questions here, letter O and P. For letter O, I would start by rearranging the two terms, or the two expressions here. I generally like to have my variables on the left-hand side. And if you switch the variables, just change the inequality sign to follow the problem here. So negative p is greater than negative 4. So that's step number 1. Just change the inequality signs so that the variable is on the left-hand side. And if I read this from right to left, negative p is greater than negative 4. That matches this statement right there. Okay, from there I can divide both sides by negative 1. This becomes positive p, this becomes positive 4, and the inequality sign goes the other way. So p is less than 4. So here's 4, open circle, and shade to the left. Okay, the next one for letter P, once again, just change the variable so that it's on the left-hand side. So if we do that, just that's how you would rewrite it. So if you switch the expressions, just switch the inequalities, and then you can divide by negative 1 on both sides again. So this will give you positive p, this will give you negative 3. And then the inequality sign just changes sides. So p is less than negative 3. So here's negative 3, and you shade to the left. Okay, let's move on to a few other questions here. Question number 7, and we also have question number 8, and then that should conclude this homework video guide. For question number 7, a student's test grades are 75, 79, 88, and 94. What score of the 5th exam will make the average at least 85%? Okay, so there's going to be 5 exams. So right now you have scores for 4 of them. So if you want to find the average for those 4, you would just start off by adding up the score results. Now we don't know what the score on the 5th exam is, so we can just add a unknown variable there. And that's what we're kind of solving for. And since there's 5 exams, we divide by 5 to find the average. And it has to be at least 85%. So it has to be greater or equal to 85. All right, so now we're just kind of solving this particular inequality. It's pretty much the same thing as solving a linear equation. Let's start off by adding these 4 numbers. So 75 plus 79 plus 88 plus 94. If I add up those numbers, I get 336. So 336 plus x divided by 5 is going to be greater or equal to 85. Okay, so since there's a 5 on the bottom, if you want to get rid of that, you can multiply it on the other side there. If you do that, you get 336 plus x is greater or equal to 85 times 5, which is 425. And then finally, there's a 336, which is positive. If I move that to the other side, x will be greater or equal to 425 minus 336. And if I continue writing here, x is going to be greater than 425 minus 336, which is going to be 89. Which is going to be 89. So you need at least 89% on the 5th exam so that your overall average will be at least 85%. All right, so that's kind of combining inequalities with solving equations. There's no negative numbers here, so you don't need to worry about flipping any inequality signs. Okay, let's move on to the very last question for this homework video guide. The width of a rectangle is 5 centimeters. Okay, so if you have a rectangle, the width is 5, so that would be this distance here, and that means this has to be 5, and that means we probably don't know the length here, so I'll call that an x and an x. And I need to find out what does the length have to be so that the perimeter is at least 30 centimeters. Okay, if you're looking for a perimeter, that means you're adding up all the sides of this particular shape. So if I look at all the sides here, I have 5 and 5. 5 plus 5 is 10, plus, then I have an x and an x. X plus x is 2x. That's my perimeter, and that has to be at least 30 centimeters, right? It has to be at least 30 centimeters. So now I need to solve this particular linear inequality, which is very similar to solving a linear equation here. So that'll be 2x is greater or equal to 30, and if I bring that 10 to the other side, it becomes minus 10. So now I have 2x is greater or equal to 20, and if I divide both sides by 2, I guess I can say x is now greater or equal to 10. So that's my answer for that final problem there.